You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Welcome back to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. We are so excited to have our guest with us today. Today's guest is Sohaib Hasan Shah, and he is here to tell us a little bit about the Brilliant Career Secondary School in Pakistan. Sohaib, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, Katie and Stan, for having me on this podcast. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we're so excited to have you. So let's dive right in. Start with telling us a little bit about your father originally founded the school. Tell us a little bit about his background and his vision and passion that sort of led him to found the school.
Yeah, so my father founded the school almost 45 years ago. And he went, people from our region, like in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, they go to different Western countries to have a good education abroad. So my father went in the early 60s to Stockholm, Sweden. He was based in Sweden, Stockholm. And he worked there. He got his education from there, middle school, then all the way till graduation. Then he started working there. And there he noticed the quality of education and its accessibility till this date, because the state takes the responsibility for education till, I guess, college over there in Sweden, Stockholm, in the whole Scandinavian region. So he was very much inspired, and he really liked the whole thing that was going on in Sweden, that the state is sponsoring such a high level of education. They're even giving you gifts from the school. The whole stationery pack is all made, so the parents don't have to buy that. Everything is on the state, and the schools cater to students' individual needs, which he found out was very good at that time. Because leaving from Pakistan, not knowing their language, the Swedish language, so they accommodated my father just like their own people. So my father till date has a very good relationship with the Swedish pension agency, and his friends still there, they still talk to them, and he feels like it's his home over there. So he was very much inspired by the whole education system over there, and then he had to come back due to some domestic issues to Pakistan. So he had that idea that why not make a school like this, like whatever schools like in Finland, in Sweden, they're really good schools. So why not bring that idea into Pakistan? And most importantly, it should be accessible to the masses. There are private schools in Pakistan, but the fees is very high. Not everybody can afford to send their children to private schools here in Pakistan as well. And in, I guess, all over the world, there are private schools which are very expensive. So accessibility is the biggest issue to education, quality education worldwide. So he brought that idea. He came back in the late 70s, and then he started off with a small preschool thing, and then building on top of that. So we have preschool all the way to till 10th standard, which is like the kind of like the high school in the before the high school in US. So this is what basically the background story is.
That is incredible. And obviously, the vision and the dream, what a legacy to make this idea of an education, which I'm sure you have incredible stories of kids whose lives this has changed. I love that he took that vision that he saw somewhere else and brought it home to Pakistan to make that accessible. It's the same here in the States as well. We have state education. It goes through 12th grade here, but public school, but we do have private school as well, and they're typically very expensive and not accessible. So we love the vision behind making that secondary education accessible to everyone. Very, very cool. And now you run the school now. Your father handed that legacy down.
Yeah. The responsibility is on me these days. Hopefully, I'm able to deliver. Hopefully, inshallah. And so this is what basically the backstory was. So since the last 5-8 years, I've been involved with my father. because every other guy living in Pakistan, India, and this region, they would just want to go abroad and settle there and do whatever they want to do. But my father somehow convinced me that this is. I was reading the backstory of Harvard and all the UC Berkeley and NYU. This is what their founders and their like children had to go through. You have to go through different phases. You have to sacrifice some of your dreams and stuff like that to make. I want to run this institution for the next 100 years. So I have to build systems and I have to align somehow with my father's vision and plus maintain my own sense of being, and I have to bring something of my own as well and and continue that legacy forward. So this is what the plan is basically, to have a school like this and then grow hopefully forward and have more branches where you can easily afford, you can have access to quality education, and you don't really have to worry about fees, like the fee payment. For example, in COVID, as we all know, there were a lot of fees issue. People couldn't afford, they lost their jobs. So we have one clear rule in our school that even if the parent cannot pay the fees, we don't rusticate the student. We don't kick them out of the school. They still keep on their classes. We usually hold results at time, but still, if we go on one basis with the parents, we talk to them. If they can't afford, we let most of the fees go. We say, okay, this is what you can. If you can afford to pay this, just pay it and leave whatever's left behind. Or if you somehow can't pay it, just leave it, but we don't end the student's journey in our school. So this is one of the rules that we. There are some core values that we still till this date, like since 46 years, that have been followed. So there are a lot of alumni. Our alumni is based throughout the world, and we had this reunion, a grand reunion of alumni, people from all over the world who studied from this school had a very big function program in our school. So even we didn't know we had alumni sitting in US, UK. They're doctors, surgeons, and they're doing pretty well. And when they met my father after like 20, 30 years, they were literally crying. And a lot of the alumni came to me and said, our parents didn't even pay attention like they were supposed to, but your father made sure that we got quality education, we got access to sports, we got our faculties developed in such a way that even our parents couldn't do that. So that was very heartening for me to see that students coming from all over the world, and they were like literally crying just by meeting my father. Because these days it's a very busy life. People have so much to do in their life, so they can't really meet their own teachers or school owners or whatever. We Due to the whole social media kind of thing, people, it seems like we are more connected, but we don't meet people often. But people came from all over the world. That event opened my eyes to a lot of things. Like, this is something serious, and I need to take this more seriously and develop more systems, and we can somehow, we need to grow this forward with having our core values intact. So this is one of the things. If someone cannot pay anything, we still continue with them. We don't just kick the children out, or we don't just tell the parents, okay, you just can't continue, so you won't get this, you won't get this. They are treated equally. This is what we try and our level best to do.
So, talk to us on that. What are some of the most difficult challenges now that you're running this school that you face? I would imagine keeping it financially stable. Do you
Yeah,
depend on
that
donors?
is
How do you do that since so many of your students can't pay?
yes, it's not so many of the students, but yes, 20 to 30% of the student pool have difficulty, especially now after COVID. What has happened? People lost their job, and the financial condition in Pakistan is not pretty stable right now. A lot of people are leaving for, and I don't blame them, they're leaving for a better life, going abroad or somewhere else. I guess it's our belief as well, like practicing Muslims. So and it's, I guess, what you put out there in the world, you get back. So somehow or the other, we come up with different. Somehow or the other, we still try and manage to. For example, we had a lot of formative assessments, so we needed a lot of paper. Paper in Pakistan is pretty expensive these days. So what I'm trying to do is move all the paper-based activities to online. So I need to upgrade my computer lab once. So then we can have all the activities that we used to do, have it online. So this is how we can manage cost and still keep our curriculum going. So this is a transition phase that we are going through right now. These are small tactics that we play around to keep the cost low and still be able to run the school properly.
Do
And one
you
of the
have,
major, yeah, one
no,
of
go
the
ahead.
major belief systems in our religion is if you do good, and I guess in all major religions this is like that. If your intentions are pure and you're working hard, some way or the other, you find a way. You find a way to do things what you're intending to do.
Yeah. Obviously, your father is a huge impact on your life and the lives of so
Yeah.
many of these students through
Mhm.
the school. And I would assume he's one of your major mentors. Do you have, since this was not your original vision and plan in life, do you have other mentors or people that also are running schools like this that you
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to and get
We
ideas like the
actually,
computer
yeah,
lab? Yeah. Tell me about those
yeah.
people.
We actually have a community of the organization name is All Private Schools Management Association of Pakistan. So it's a pool of private school owners who meet often in different meetings for of different agendas. But I have what I do is, for example, the Chat GPT thing. So I'm trying to make the like we I was discussing this earlier with my school teachers that it's becoming very difficult for us to now to cipher is this essay written by a student or by ChatGPT and other AI tools that is. So we need a policy for AI tools and stuff. So I do my own research after school and discuss it with other school owners who are in the same position as we are, and we help each other. We learn from each other. We have a whole thing going on. So it's a big help meeting other people, and I meet other people online. I have joined a few groups online. Basically, they're mainly they're US groups in which all the teachers from US are there. So I have this global classroom session which I've invited a few teachers and they talk with my students in school. So we have these things going on. It's a good English speaking practice plus getting to know different cultures and stuff like that.
Very cool. About how many teachers and students do you have at school?
We have around 700 plus students and almost 55 teaching staff. 50 to
It's a big,
yeah.
it's a big
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
That's a big school. Is your father still, obviously, this was his vision and legacy from the start. Is he still very involved with the school, or has he mostly passed that off to you?
He has mostly passed that on to me, but he still goes to school time to time because
It's
he's
good.
lived in the West. So that my father is pretty much he's learned a lot of stuff from the Scandinavian culture. Since the last 5 8 years, he's completely handed off to me. He just said, "I've taught you whatever I've taught you, and now it's up to you to carry it forward. Keep your research going. Keep learning new things. Keep meeting new people." And add your flavor into it. So he's pretty open about it. Unlike the culture here in our part of the world. Yeah. So I
Right.
actually have a book idea which I'm using. I think maybe I'm crazy. I have this book idea by the name of Confessions of an Obedient Child, in
I
which
like it.
I'm trying to draw like trying to show a contrast in which parents and children in the West how it's like in the West and how it's like in our part of the world, West versus the East, in the parenting norms, cultures, and how children respond to their parents. Because of my very first introduction to the Western world, my father, when he came back, so we didn't had any internet at that time when I was a child. So he installed a dish, TV antenna dish, which would catch channels from the US, and we used to watch it. So my very first introduction to I know this could to the Western world and the American world was the Star World. And the very first show I watched there was Donald Trump's Apprentice. He launched that show back then. And I was like, oh, so this is how things go. He's like, you're fired, you hired. And this is how they do stuff like that. Okay, oh, this is pretty interesting. This guy comes in, opens the door, sit on his table, and there are people there. I guess it was like he had 15 to 20 people sitting on the table which contested amongst them on different business tasks, and you used to select the winner, the whoever was eliminated and the last one standing was the winner, and he was the apprentice to his businesses and stuff like that. So my very first introduction to the Western world was Donald Trump. Unlikely. And I was very like in our culture, it's like very respectful. It's like very toned down. Okay, this is my father, so I have to talk to them like this. This is my and in even in the corporate culture and stuff like that, it's we have a different thing going on. In the Western thing, when I saw him, he was like, "You're fired." I was like, "Wow." Okay, so this is. But in a way, what I'm thinking to write in the book, in a way, like what I experienced with in my own family and in my there's too much respect. This also shouldn't happen. What I'm trying to do in my school is I am my own man. I am my own person. I need to, if I just be an obedient son, I don't think I can do very well in the world. I need to put out something who I am, and I need to put that out in a respectful manner, which like living in this culture. But this is what I've learned from the West. Like Donald Trump saying you're fired, at least he's being honest and he's being upfront, and he's saying it's pretty difficult to do that in front of the whole television, the whole world watching you. So this is what I've learned like my time abroad when I was in Malaysia. So I've met a lot of people there from different cultures. Malaysia is a pretty multicultural country, and my university was Australian, so I met a lot of Australians, a few Americans over there. So this is what I intend to write in the book, that the clash of cultures. Some things what we can learn from the West, and I think some things, the respect and stuff like that, the West can learn from our culture. Maybe I'm crazy or something. This is what my idea is to write a book.
No, I really love that idea. It's so funny that The Apprentice is the show that you watch. I will
Yeah,
say,
it's different.
fortunately, that's a bit dramatized. The actual business world, for the most part, is a little bit more gentle than that. Although
Yeah,
certainly does not have that level of respect, particularly respect for older generations that your
yeah, yeah,
country has. So I love the premise of the book and just that idea that there's actually something to be learned from both cultures.
yeah,
Certainly, one of those things we have here in the States, just because of our background as a country, is that idea that you are your own man. I
yeah.
don't feel like we have, and most places, a lot of places in the world, I guess I should say, very much have that generational, you carry the legacy, you carry the family name,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
do the family
yeah,
business much more so than in the United States. I've never Googled the percentage, but I'm sure it's 90s plus that people don't
yeah. I can
typically
imagine.
tend to go into the same industry necessarily that their parents did. And so very interesting. Stan and I can't wait. We'll be the first buyers of your book when you get that written. I do think there's certainly a fine line to walk there, and certainly we
Yeah.
can learn a lot more about respect and really respecting the wisdom and the legacies of the older generations that they are passing
Because
down to us. I
I'm a
do think
big
in the States we
yeah.
don't have enough respect for that, for sure.
Yeah. I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan. I listen to his podcast very regularly. Peterson is a huge influence on my life. And I think like traditions, what I heard in his podcast was traditions are experiments that worked.
I
So
love
there
that.
are things, yeah. So there are things that people did in every culture, and they did over a period of time with trial and error, and they reached a certain conclusion. And like I said earlier, those things worked, and they produced results for people who were like who came before us. So we can learn something from that. And my twist on this thing is learning from the Western culture is have your own say as well. I need to be my own individual. I need to have my individual thoughts and processes so I can grow as a person. This is what I think. Like the Western culture is pretty open, and I to a very large extent I like that, because in our culture it's oh don't say this, don't say that. I think we can manage to say have different crucial conversations, or very we can say we can develop a vocabulary, like we can talk to our fathers or mothers or different people in our society in a very respectful way, and somehow find a way to do your own thing as well. Just not rely only on traditions or family business and stuff like that. Don't be just be a copycat of what your father or what your parents have taught you. You should be a better product of. You should what I believe is, and what my father tells me, you should be better than what I was. This is how the society will develop further, stuff like that. So this is my basic premise. Maybe I'm crazy. Stuff like that. Confessions of an Obedient Child. Hopefully I'll be able to finish it. So
I love that. Stan, I've stolen all the questions. What questions do you have?
I have many questions. So let me say, I love the idea of the book. I'm anxious to get my hands on it. So is that something are you actually working on that now?
I had this idea because I'm in this transition phase. I'm doing what my father said, but somehow I take time out of that and take time out of, for example, I was reading a few articles and was listening to Jordan Peterson. Like, people are now, I think it is a taboo to live with your parents in the West. I guess is it maybe, or it shows that you are not. I don't know. I don't know exactly, but people are now, if there's a financial condition or whatever the
Yeah,
situation is,
right.
people are now moving back to their parents' house. So that's not exactly a very bad thing to do. You
Yeah.
can
It's
get that.
certainly happening a great deal. I think, yeah, there are a lot of people in their 20s, even their 30s, who still live with parents because they haven't really gotten their life launched yet. And so they do
Yeah.
live with parents. And so I wouldn't say it's a taboo. It
Yeah.
probably is an indication that you
Mhm.
have really not become a fully self-reliant, independent
Yeah.
person, right, in your
Mhm.
own right. So I'm curious. I have
Yeah.
lots of questions. I'm really curious about this. Your school is not your school is secular, right? You're not a religious school, right?
No, not per se as religious. We have daily prayers. We have one prayer in our school that happens. But we are very open to the idea. Like, we have 4 or 5 female Christian staff working in our school. They do
So,
their own thing whenever
right.
they're.
So where I was really going with that is
Yeah.
it really relates to, I would say, relates to how you as an educational institution, how you work to instill values in
Yeah.
students. And
We
I'm
have
curious.
this. Yeah, yeah. We have, like, at a very core level, that we have 5 pillars of our Islam, the religion. 5 pillars. We introduce that. We have our religious scripture, the Quran. We introduce that as a subject, like in different classes. We have different parts of scripture that are there that students memorize and stuff like that. It's at a very core level in our school, basically.
So tell us about some success stories of students. You guys have been at this a while now, so I would imagine over the last 45 years, you
Yeah,
have
yeah. I'm
students that are out in the world doing some pretty amazing things.
Yeah, we are currently making a database of students who are mostly they're abroad. I know a few doctors who are on very good plastic surgeons of in Germany. There's this lady, I forgot his name. We are still making the database because the event happened this year, earlier this year. So we're now making a proper database of students. Like, one of the plastic surgeon is like in top 5 plastic surgeons of the world. She's a lady, and does that in Germany. She practices her thing in Germany, and she specializes in people who are like war veterans, or they really had a really horrific accidents and stuff like that. So their whole face or body, it's distorted. So she fixes that only. So we have students like that all over the world. But yes, we still have to make a database of the students of our alumni. So we know exactly where students are working in different fields, in different AI. Many of our students are working in Microsoft. They're working heavily on it. These days, AI is the thing. So all the tech guys are in the AI field, machine learning and stuff like that.
So are you finding these alums that you have out of the world, are they contributing now to the support? Because it sounds like with 55 faculty members, 700 students, the budget, the cost of
Yeah,
operating a
yeah,
school
yeah.
is not
Yeah, it's pretty big.
insignificant.
It's not a, and I'd like to quote again from, I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan as well. So I heard this, and Jordan Peterson's podcast, like hard men create create good times create soft men, and then soft men create hard times, and then the cycle goes over again. So what I believe is, if my work is pretty hard these days, especially these days, the financial condition and stuff like that. What we tell our alumni is, don't give the money to us, don't even tell us what who you're supporting, just support them on your own. We have done this since 46 years, and we still have this thing that we will try and manage it on our own. So alumni, they may be help. I know a few people who are helping certain students to pay their fees, but we don't get directly involved. What I was thinking to do is make this a proper thing, because this was the first time I met a lot of alumni students. So what I was thinking to do is make an alumni organization, build a whole organization around it, and make somebody the president so he can manage all the funds and stuff. Whoever wants to contribute, so there's a set system in place. This is what I'm currently trying to do, making processes and systems. This is also done very well in the Western world somehow. Meet people online. They have really made like really good systems which anybody can follow. So this is how you can run, for example, Harvard or Yale. They run on systems. They have systems, and they don't depend on a single guy running it. So I don't want to be like it's Sohaib Hassan's Shah. So I don't want to be the sole owner of this thing. I just want to have systems. So hopefully my children will follow this, or somebody else would do. The school should remain there, regardless of what I'm doing or what the next person would do. Just
That
like
leads. Go ahead. Yeah, that leads perfectly into one of the final questions I have for you, which is, we know what your father's vision was, and obviously after the alumni event, you can clearly see what his legacy is. What do you hope, through all of the work that you're doing now and the upgrades on the school with technology and different programs and building systems for the future, what do you hope your legacy will be?
I hope the same way, like my legacy, I would like to end like when I saw those alumni came into the office and met, and they started crying, and it was unbelievable. I couldn't put this into words. So I hope when I'm that age, the same thing happens to me, or maybe even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Stan, did you have any other questions before we close out?
I just want to say how proud your father has to be of you. I'm a father. I have a son, and I'm proud of my son. And I know what your father must feel to see you really grabbing the torch and carrying, like really being the instrument to fully realize his vision, and to do it with a game plan that will allow it to perpetuate even beyond yourself.
Yeah.
So your dad's got to be proud. I wish we should interview him.
I'm trying my best.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone who is listening, this has been the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today was Sohaib Hasan Shah, and for more information on Sohaib and the work that he's doing, or on the Brilliant Careers Secondary School, you can go to facebook.com or instagram.com/Brilliant Career School to get connected. Sohaib, thank you so much again for joining us. It was truly a pleasure.
You're welcome, Katie and Stan. It was one of the great experiences that I had on the podcast before, and it was really wonderful. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.